Is the base iPad from 2019. This is one of the cheapest laptops that you can buy. Is it actually worth it? Let's find out. Welcome back to Reviewing the Cheapest, because tech is expensive, but you don't have to spend all that money. You can save some dough and get some very valuable things out there. And today we are talking about one of my favorite computers that I've used over the last few months, and that is the iPad. This is the base model iPad that you can go out and get for like 300 bucks, I think it sells for now. And this has, so I have two computers in my house. I have my iMac Pro that I do all of this video stuff on, and this is obviously, if you're new here, this is not my primary channel, but so I have the iMac Pro that does most of my video editing, but for travel and for everything else, I use this iPad. And this is, of all the computers I've ever had, this is my favorite. And today we're gonna talk about a few of the reasons why this computer that costs almost nothing is as good as it is. Because mainly, don't let the price tag fool you. Like, this is a monster computer, and even though a lot of people out there say that it can't replace a traditional desktop, I think it could. Like, legitimately, if I could get Final Cut Pro, my editing software, on this iPad, all I would need is an iPad. This $300 iPad can do some crazy things, so let's get into it. First off, I really like the speed of this computer. So you'll see that it has all of the same apps, it has all the same things as like the iPad Pro. It has the A10 processor inside of it, which just makes it like, it's super snappy. Like, look at this, like even editing. So let's pop over into the editing software that I use when I do edit on the go, when I edit with the iPad. This is called LumaFusion. But what's crazy about this, again, $300 tablet, this can edit 6K video like it's nothing. So this is a clip from my Lumix S1H that we're recording on right now, which is actually it's a Netflix approved cinema camera that can shoot in 6K. And this is a 6K clip. Look at this. Other hybrid camera has to offer. And if you've watched all this and you've decided that the S1H is right for you, I bet you'd love to see this video where I talk about all the best tips and tricks. Like, this is 6K, and look at that. I challenge anybody watching this video to go out and find a $320 computer of any kind. It can be Apple, it can be PC, it can be anything that can easily go through and edit, like chop. Whoops. Edit, chop. Oh, let's get rid of that. Delete. Chop. Like, do you see frame drops? I mean, there's a little bit of stuttering because it is a $300 computer. But you go out there and you find me another $300 computer that can edit 6K video like this, that can even play back 6K video, that can move around. That's the power. Like, I get it that Apple doesn't necessarily win on specs. When have you ever looked at an Apple product besides like the Mac Pro and been like, whoa, their specs are the best? They never win on specs, but I'll tell you, it all is optimized so well. The speed of this thing is unreal. And look at that. Right back to the home screen. The other thing that I really like about this, we kind of already touched on this next thing, but I really like the apps inside of the iPad. So we talked about LumaFusion, which is my like standard go-to editing on the go app, because it can do a lot of what a traditional editing software can do. Like if you were to edit video inside of like Final Cut Pro X, inside of Premiere Pro, LumaFusion does a lot of the same things. And this isn't necessarily a video about LumaFusion, but if you're like, so this is log footage that we were recording in right here. You can come over here and you can do things like, so these are presets that I have set up right here, but you can also add LUTs to it. So I have all of my favorite LUTs loaded into here. So you can grade footage from here, log footage. This is like traditional, these are professional LUTs from Panasonic for their Vericam line, which work with the S1H, and they easily just load right into here. So you can grade, you can do all of that from LumaFusion. There's a few other apps that I have on here that I'm a really big fan of. So I like controlling my camera when I'm not like touching it. So like right now we're on the GH5, we're on the S1H, and they're being controlled by another iPad, because I'm a sucker for iPads, right? They're controlled by an iPad and an iPhone. I always have the camera company's controllers, like their apps, installed on these things. And that's what, another thing that makes iPad so usable. Yeah, I always use I don't have a computer. I don't have the camera to connect to this, but those apps, there are apps called Google Docs to type on the go, which we'll talk more about. There's so much we're gonna talk about. I'm very excited about this. But yeah, the apps inside of this thing are absolutely nuts. There's a whole range of like free options. There's productivity apps, there's creation apps, there's everything. There's all sorts of apps. There was an app for that. So the iPad keyboard, and so I didn't really, I've never been a big fan of typing on digital keyboards, so when iPad first came out, I was very skeptical about it because I don't like doing let's go to Google Docs. I don't like typing from the keyboard, even though it's not that bad. It's just not an experience that I enjoy. So I do like that Apple has come out with these keyboards, so all you have to do is plug it in like that, and then you have like the full keyboard experience. So the thing that, if you're gonna use this as like a productivity device, like the keyboard is almost a requirement. I like that it just is so transportable. Like, there you go. Now it's all together with a full keyboard. The iPad that we saw can edit 6K video. And look, where else could you find something? And where does this fit? This fits everywhere. Everywhere. And because it's $300, if I were to go buy another MacBook Pro, because I have used MacBook Pros in the past, those are expensive, and I'm always like, I'm gonna break it. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna break it. I gotta baby it. But this is like, it's $300. If this breaks, I'll go buy another one. Like, yes, the keyboard's another few $100, and the pencil's another, it's $100? The keyboard combined with all of this is just really something that sells this and puts it over the edge in every day. Like, if you want to use this for everyday use, or if you want to use this for like creation. Now, I did mention the pencil. This uses the iPad Pencil Generation 1. I have it around here, but I don't actually know because I almost never use it. Like, I don't really like the pencil all that much. I like with iPad OS, you can now enable mouse support. And so that's how I use it when I'm on the go. I just use this with a mouse. I connect it to a Bluetooth mouse real quick, and then you get the options of using this like a more traditional computer. Now let's talk about, so this is just a kind of a quick recap video coming back to reviewing the cheapest. So we've talked about the things I like: the speed, the portability, the cost, the power. Like, all of those things are great, but it's not perfect. So the major thing that I don't like about the iPad is it's got the Lightning port. Now the iPad Pro has USB-C, but this one is still rocking the Lightning port. And the reason I don't like this is one of the main benefits of using like iPad OS is you can plug it into monitors, you can plug it into solid state drives, you can plug it into all sorts of stuff. And yes, you need a dongle to do a lot of that stuff with the iPad Pro. A lot of that stuff though does work with USB-C. Here you absolutely have to use a dongle, and I hate using dongles if I don't have to, but like here, you have to get the Lightning to whatever dongle because Lightning's the worst. Like, I do not like Lightning connections. We should just move to USB-C just from now on. You can use monitors, you can use the external solid state drives, just so much easier. Like, Apple, the next iPad, just the next straight up iPad, budget, cheap one, please have USB-C because it's the best. Everything else is kind of the worst. And then the next thing I don't really like, and this is not just the iPad, this is like iPads in general, like even the iPad Pros have this problem. They don't necessarily play nice with all like camera video codecs. So like the Panasonics that we're recording on right now, I have no problem ever using these with iPads. The Sony, that's the overhead camera, this is the Sony a7 III. Sony files have problems sometimes importing into iPads, even after iPad OS with all of the files. Sometimes they'll be in here and then they just won't work. And that sucks. And that's one of the things that I could never actually trust this as a primary computer if I was using a Sony camera. I don't primarily use Sony cameras, so it's not as bad for me. But when I was, it was like I had a whole nightmare in New York where I was invited to a launch event for a Sony camera, and I was using the Sony cameras and I couldn't get the file to work on the iPad. So I had to run through downtown New York to go to the I think it was the Grand Central Station Apple Store and buy a MacBook while I'm on a travel trip so that I could edit the video, because the iPad, that was a nightmare just all by itself. So I don't like the Sony, I don't like the compatibility with like Sony files, I don't like the Lightning port, and I don't like that the base model only has 32 gigabytes because 32 gigabytes, I mean, it's 2020. 32 gigabytes is like literally nothing. But besides all that, I think the iPad, this is probably the best computer I've ever purchased in my life. Like, this is without a doubt my favorite travel, like productivity, creation, everything. I would highly recommend the iPad. You don't have to buy the Pro. You don't have to buy all that fancy. You don't have to buy like the $1,000, the $1,500 options. You can get this for $300 and basically run an entire online social media everything. And it just, look, it just travels with you. Are we pivoting to an iPad channel? I guess find out soon. Thanks for watching.